Okay, so today, of course, we're coming together to provide feedback to colleagues on spot observation feedback, specifically the praise, polish, and question. And we'll use the following discussion questions to support us as we fishbowl and allow our colleagues to listen in. What coaching moves will be the most effective in building the teacher's capacity? How will the feedback provide improved instructional delivery? Is the phrase clear? Does it encourage continuation of a best practice? Is the polish clear? Does it include action steps? Does the questions promote reflection that will improve a practice? Is the feedback aligned to descriptors in the spot? And of course, we want to make sure that this is something that the teacher can read and put into action immediately. And we know that the practice is that we will speak, and in this case, it's Miss Kennedy. So she'll listen in, she'll take note of anything that we say, and then she will implement that feedback on how she would improve her feedback moving forward. So if we can all just take a moment to read the feedback. Okay, maybe one more minute. Okay. We start with the praise or whatever we see. I know one thing that I see is that the appraiser does point out that the teacher stamps key points. But I was curious as to like what specific key points were stamped. And I also saw that there was an attempt to scaffold, and my question was, how did the teacher scaffold, or what, what did they use to actually scaffold?
I like that she did, let the teacher know that she did see the alignment between the lesson objective and the instructional delivery.
So I have wondering, I noticed in the praise it says that students were asked to participate in a turn and talk, but then in the polish it says that when they completed or when they were asked to do the turn and talk, they were not speaking. So I'm wondering why it was mentioned in praise, but it wasn't really effective.
Which will also bring to the point that I looked at that the teacher got a 0.5. So why did they get a 0.5 in listening and speaking versus a 0? Because even though there was an attempt, it was executed in an unsatisfactory manner. So I would question that.
I had the same wondering with monitor and adjust. I noticed that they said the teacher monitors, however, there was no evidence that adjustments were taking place in the moment. So that's again too, why would there be a 0.5 there, not a 0?
I want to go back on what you guys are saying, because I'm thinking about the 0.5. So what is the preponderance of what happened during that turn and talk? Because if there's some evidence of it there, do they get the 0.5 or do they get a 0 altogether? And I think that's the whole biggest thing of us meeting is for us making these decisions, because are they gonna get a 0.0 or are we gonna give them a 0.5?
So we know that a 0 is unsatisfactory. Even though they attempted it, and it was just unsatisfactory in the execution.
Right. So I'm looking at the spot calibration support document that we were given, and a 0 is the teacher's attempt demonstrates the indicator was done with fidelity, and just a polish would lead to significant outcomes with the students. So if it was minimal student learning, then that always gets a 0.
So if there's some evidence of student learning, then that's where you can get that preponderance and lead to the 0.5. But we're saying that in this, they tried to execute it and nothing was done.
My other question is, was it only one turn and talk? Because it may have been on one that didn't happen
It's in that
and one
month.
that did.
But I
And
mean,
that's a
But we're
good
only
point though.
correct.
That means that the appraiser probably should have notated that there was 2 out of 3 attempts or
Right.
1 out of 3 attempts.
Right.
And but we don't know that here based on this.
Well, that was kind of my question with the polish. It just says that, the students were not speaking, but we don't know how many,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because
Oh.
it could have been,
Something
they
quantitative.
may have got a 0.5 because there was 3 out of 20 that weren't speaking,
And on the.
as opposed to a 0 because there was 18 out of 20 that weren't speaking.
Right.
So I mean, to me, to me, as part of that feedback for the polish, it would be good to point out specifically how many, because in the teacher's mind, they may think everybody was doing it and they may not have seen 2 or 3 kids.
Mhm.
And two kids or 3 kids is a little easier leverage to pick up and get that impact, as opposed to if you're talking about 18 out of 25 didn't do it, then we've got a much broader.
I
On
agree
there,
with-
did it say anything about for monitoring and justice, say the super majority? Remember how we saw that verbiage?
Yeah,
Right,
for number
super
one,
majority.
for number one at the top, it says the super majority has to do it. So I agree, like, if we had a count that could, show that, like, hey, it wasn't the super majority, this is why you didn't get a 1.
Also annotated, the monitoring wasn't intentional. You didn't have a seating chart or roster, 1 or 2, wasn't using a quick check system, or annotating or going around marking. So I annotated that.
What's the thing going, go ahead.
No, I was just looking back at monitor and adjust, and it just says the teacher walks around the room to look at the responses, doesn't spend more than 30 seconds with any one student or group of students. They are also noticing if students have achieved mastery, and then they adjust to move on faster than even the teacher anticipated. Or if they notice misconceptions in the moment, they're stopping to give those students feedback really quickly.
So, turning back to turn and talk, I like in the question, it's a very specific, targeted question about it. How does giving explicit instructions during a turn and talk support students engaging in the strategy? Then she goes on to actually definitively explain what the turn and talk is. So that should be something that should be corrected by the next class period, because it's great information and it's very direct of how it should be done.
Well, so my question with that though is, I like it, don't get me wrong, but is that something that we include in here, or is it that in the conversation, in the follow-up conversation? Where are we placing that? Cause I know,
Where does it go?
in both,
I
okay,
think even the polish actually is
Okay.
where the action step should have been.
right.
Like, this is what I saw that needed some improvement, and this is what I suggest you do to improve it.
Cause I think the question is a good question.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
I think it says that students engage in the turn and talk. But my question, I pointed out the same kind of wonderings that Ms. Bruce had in the praise, in what ways did you coach the teacher, or what way did he stamp? And what did the scaffolding look like? But I also had a wondering under polish. You used the word requested, and that just could be your choice of words, that the teacher requested that the students complete a turn and talk activity. Was it an actual pen to paper activity, or was it just them engaging in conversation? And was it pre-planned? Did the teacher have something on the slide that indicate like an internalization of the slide? Or was it just something the teacher said, like, this is what we're gonna do? Right.
Well, and part, my wondering also is, does the question that we're asking of the teacher really align to what the polish is? Because when I look at the polish, what I see is that we, at least on the surface, we framed the strategy correctly. We just didn't ensure we had 100% of participation. But then the question is focused more on the actual framing of the strategy and how we're delivering it.
Right.
So is the polish getting 100%, or is the polish the actual delivery of this strategy?
I can see how that could be two different
Yeah.
lenses to look through.
I guess you will go back to planning and analyze his exemplars. Where was it to where you were incorporating MRS? Or one of the students to turn and talk or right? Things like that.
But that's good points for the follow-up question.
What questions would you have changed, Ms. Alexander? Could you say that question about the turn and talk? You would have put that in the polish. What question would you, or any of you guys?
No,
what
I'm
would
just
you make
saying,
it?
I think that it's good the way that she explained how you implement a turn and talk with fidelity.
Right.
I would have put it in a polish.
Oh, okay.
And then the question be the standalone by itself,
Right.
for them to really reflect on, you know.
Just a question.
That's
Right.
what I would get to,
Because the question should probe the teacher to reflect and how to improve their practice
Exactly.
themselves
Exactly.
without us giving explicit instructions. It's
Right.
more of like how to get them to reflect on something they did in the class
Mhm.
and improve it.
Mhm.
Now, in the polish, we addressed it, but we also give them strategy
Right.
Yeah.
on how
How
to
to
implement
Or
it.
examples
Yeah.
that they could use to accomplish that.
And I think that to go along with what you were saying, to me, if this part of how to do the turn and talk would have been in the polish, then that would have addressed the question of were the kids not, you know, how the turn and talk was implemented. Are the students not talking because they didn't know how to respond, they weren't told how much time to be given, or was it because it was off the cuff? And maybe that wasn't clear enough, and so the planning wasn't there, but I think, that if she would've took that and put it up here, then maybe that would've said, okay, now, your students weren't, you told them to do a turn and talk, however, they weren't given explicit instructions on how to do the turn and talk, so then, that then made it a little vague on how the students were responding, or why they might not have been talking to each other, or whatever the case may be, yeah.
You could have also implemented sentence stems to get them to start talking,
Mhm.
if you saw that they were struggling.
So I have another kind of bigger question, and it's a bigger question, but, looking at the instruction, there's only one part that they got a 0. That was under annotation and reading.
And
So we're-
exemplars.
Yeah, so we got a 0. So I know we're talking about the turn and talk and that specifically, and that's a 0.5. Some of us, we said maybe it'd be 0, some did 0.5. This is something where it could be focused on, because we know that was a true necessity to be worked on, these annotation and readings, that's a big thing right now.
You saying make that a focal point?
Well, I'm just
So I think your
asking.
question is,
Yeah,
if a
that's-
teacher received a 0, should that be the area where the polish in question?
Yes, thank you.
And I'm wondering if maybe, the coach thought if they had better MRS setup, that maybe that would have addressed the annotation or exemplars, or maybe the MRS could have been an area, like if it was internalized and prepared better, the teacher could have included the annotating or an exemplar. I don't know, maybe, I'm wondering if the coach decided that that was the most high leverage thing.
That's what I was gonna say. To me, you're looking at what's the highest leverage that we can do now.
Right.
Right.
The 0 might be a much bigger conversation that's gonna involve
Right.
That's good.
more.
Or support.
I
Yes.
concur.
And I think that goes along with the first bullet, what coaching moves will be the most effective in building teachers' capacity, like right now.
Right.
So implementing that turn and talk.
Because remember, we're dissecting this thing, this is a 10-minute block, maybe max 15. So we're really dissecting this, but I know what all of us are doing this, we're in the grind and getting these spots in. And are we all being that effective with our spots? So
Right.
I do like this activity, I know we did it last year as well, but it was kind of good because we got to practice and, I would say collaborate, it's called. Not collaborate, what's the word?
Calibrate?
Calibrate. That word leaves me every time, calibrate.
And I'm noticing, this is a math class, so in that moment, he may not have been reading and annotating. So just having him, I guess, the conversation, incorporating some type of writing in every, or even a justification. How did you reach X, Y, Z?
And annotation.
Or the
Do
annotation.
they use cubes in this level of math?
Is there. Yes, that's the expectation for all math classes.
So then that could have been added into the polish since the teacher did receive the 0. Remember to use cubes as your annotation strategy for your questions. Possibly.
Yeah.
So, Ms. Kennedy has had an opportunity to listen to us, of course, and now she's going to take a moment. She's captured some feedback. She will let us know what she will take and how she will improve her feedback moving forward. Okay, so based on the fishbowl of us speaking and everything that you've gathered, what would you improve on your feedback?
On the praise part, I would definitely move the portion where I talked about they did a turn and talk, but it wasn't implemented well, put that down to the polish. I've been working with the teacher on doing student engagement strategies, so I chose a very quick leverage. The turn and talk instructions, explicit instructions, the teacher did not give explicit instructions. About 50% of the class was talking, 50% were not. So that's why I decided this is the highest leverage I could do, was to give him those instructions on how to engage in the turn and talk, because he, prior to, he did not have any specific training on how to do it. So we've been working on him doing the type of strategies that we incorporate here. So for me, I will definitely be more descriptive when I say the teacher did scaffolding. I know I need to give maybe an example or two for what scaffolding the teacher did, as well as how he stamped the point after the students did a practice, whiteboard practice. He stamped the point, yes, absolute value is blank and blank. I didn't write it, but he did say it. So in the future, I will document the evidence that he did that. My question, I do like the fact, and I do agree that I could have put the example of how to give explicit instructions in the polished part versus the question part, and just leave the question for them to grapple with and do the self-reflection about how they can do it better and how it affects student engagement and student achievement in the classroom. So those are some two different things I will definitely work on the next time I do it. For the teacher, for the monitor and adjust, he did monitor, he did give feedback to 2 or 3 students, like that's good, that's great, I like the way you did that, but he didn't get around to all students. I think, so he did it, but because he didn't get around to the majority of students, I didn't give him a full point. I gave him the half of the point. Yes, and so I did give him the half a point, because for the turn and talk, he did attempt to make it work, but his explicit instructions could have been better, and I think he would have gotten more student engagement if he said specifically who was gonna talk, because he didn't have tables of 2, he had tables of 4, and he would say, y'all talk first. But instead of giving that direction, if he had systems set up, the person with the blue, you talk to the person with the white, or what have you, I think more students would have will be engaged in that turn and talk. So for the most part, I do believe that I addressed the items that you all spoke about. So in the next lesson, I know we talked about the annotating the text and the exemplars. So we met in PLC and for both the science and math PLC, but for them specifically, I told them that we're not expected just to use a student exemplar, but to actually embed an exemplar in every slide where you're going to do a student engagement strategy, so that the students know what you're looking for when you ask the question or you do a whiteboard. So they're expected to now embed the exemplars or have an anchor chart and refer to the anchor chart when they're doing it. The annotating the text, it was just not there. They're all expected to use cubes all the time. So it was just not there. That's just something I'm gonna have to continue to coach them on, or make some other decisions regarding the annotating.
Okay, so Ms. Kennedy, you did a great job recapping the lesson. Now I would like for you to answer the question. how did you take what we stated in the Fishbowl, and how are you gonna use that to improve your feedback moving forward? What tidbits did you take away that you would implement immediately?
Be very descriptive in my response, because they're expected to read it, so I'll be very more descriptive and even try to include numbers, data, so that they can see. I also follow up with the teacher afterwards. I expect them to answer my question in the email. So, and then I visit their classes every day. I visit their classes and I talk to them about things. So immediately I would just go revisit that, ask them, you know, how did he do or implement the strategy, the turn and talk, and then I might watch him for those 2 minutes, do that quick round and watch him there. I enjoy this.
So in your feedback moving forward, you would include more low inference evidence,
Yes.
specific details on action steps,
Yes, absolutely.
and a more reflective question.
Yes, ma'am, I will.
I have wondering, when we go back to this, this is the spot calibration document, with her saying that 50% of the kids were participating in the MRS, does that constitute us to be able to score
Is that
0.5?
super majority?
That's not super majority, but I mean, I'm saying we talking about 0.5 and 1.
So for one, it says 75 to 90%.
Right, so for 0.5, that 50%.
It's the partial.
Right, it's a partial, okay. I was just, that